All right. Hello, everybody. And we're live. My name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education and Content at the Davis. I almost said the Dairy Center. My daughter went to the Dairy Center last night and I had it on my head. The Davis Finney Foundation. And I'm here with Larry Linton. How you doing, Larry?
Good, and you? Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So glad that you're here. So Larry, this is sort of the first time we've met. We've met
Right.
over email, but
Yes.
this is the first time we've met. You're a Davis Finney Foundation ambassador. For those people who are not familiar with you, I'd love for you to just share a little bit about who you are and what did you do before you kind of came to the foundation and found out you had Parkinson's, and a little bit about your life and work.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thanks for having me on, Mel. It's great to be part of this. I'm very impressed with Davis Finney, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I mean, my journey started about 10 years ago when I was diagnosed officially in about 2012 with Parkinson's at the age of 49. I had experienced, like we all do, experienced symptoms before then. But I had years of anxiety and depression and insomnia, which preceded the physical symptoms that I started developing. And it took about 2 or 3 years to get that formal diagnosis. I ruled out. My GP up in Canada said I was too young to have Parkinson's, referred me to acupuncture, physiotherapist, Chinese herbalist, and I sort of ruled out everything. And I still had the twitching in my right hand and the dragging right leg, which was the issue. But after that, I saw a neurologist. It took about 30 minutes before he diagnosed that I had young onset Parkinson's, and left me with a script and to my own devices. And the worst thing I did is when I got home from the doctor, I Googled, young onset Parkinson's, and then was overwhelmed with what I was reading, with no context and understanding of what I was reading or looking at. And that threw me into a complete spin, into depression, where I didn't know what I was going to do. I was 49 years old, mid-career, mortgage, the principal breadwinner. And those questions about how my life was going to evolve with Parkinson's kept me awake more than the physical symptoms of what I was dealing with. I think there was that whole psychological issue, how my role would change as a father and a husband, and could I keep working? Those are the things that kept me awake and kept me disengaged from my family. I started living, life on my couch, really, literally. I made it into work, but I buried myself behind closed doors, behind files, didn't engage with my team. And that went on for about 2 years before I realized and reached that point of acceptance. So, my life with Parkinson's has been before Parkinson's and after Parkinson's. But within living with Parkinson's, I had a period of time where I lived against it. And then after 2 or 3 years on that point of acceptance, started living with it.
Yeah.
And that's when my life started changing. But I had to go through those deep, dark days where I was on my own. My family had sort of deserted me. I was prone to panic attacks. And all of the emotional trauma of dealing with Parkinson's took a hold until I was on my own on a Saturday night and just burst out crying. I think all those years of pent up anxiety and what I was dealing with came too much. But in that calmness after those tears, I realized that I had to get going. I had to keep moving, and I started walking on the treadmill, and that led to running, etc. So, my life has been one of, as I said, before and after.
Mm-hmm.
But within that, also some good days and some bad days. I mean, that's the journey of
it. So, I have a couple of things I just want to unpack a little bit prior to your diagnosis. Were you an exerciser before that?
Yes, well, that I think has been the saving grace for me. I was born into adversity. My father passed away when he was 45 and I was 6 from heart disease. So I was always growing up, always aware of my own mortality. And the first thing I wanted to do was reach the age of 45, which I did. And through my years, I've always exercised. I've been a runner. I played soccer as a younger kid. Have been physically active most of my adult life. Obviously, at 49, I bypassed 45. But when I got to 49, I was given this other diagnosis of Parkinson's. So I think the years of exercise have certainly helped me in dealing with my current symptoms and my now second decade living with Parkinson's, because I find that the exercise is necessary. There's no question about that. So I took advantage and had a reasonable level of fitness, and I think that has stood me in good stead even now. When my mobility is compromised to a certain extent.
Right. So you get the diagnosis, and what did so it sounds like the doctor was just, hey, you're taking meds and see you later. So was
Right.
there much discussion about anything other than medication? And it sounds like um, you know, everybody has a different experience of that
Right.
"you
Right.
have Parkinson's" conversation, right?
Right.
And some people have the benefit of an amazing doctor who says,
Correct.
"Listen, you have it, but that's just one thing, and you're gonna be great. You're gonna be able to live a long time. Here are the things that you can do." Sounds like you had the opposite of that.
Yes,
But how do you
absolutely.
think that impacted those 2 years? I just feel like, oh my gosh, if you had had a different experience, right?
Yeah, looking back, I wish I would have had that better experience. Mine was very clinical, very unemotional. I left with a script and it was a kind of attitude. It was take the medication and we'll see you in 6 months' time.
Yeah, no
Um,
discussion about,
no,
"Should I start them now or should I not start them now?"
exactly,
And
exactly.
uh-huh.
So in other words, I think I was set up for failure when
Yeah,
that happened because I didn't leave with any information on Parkinson's at all. Looking back, what I would love to have been given is some sort of uh, game plan, some sort of manual. And I mean, the Davis Finney Every Victory Counts manual is terrific. And I know that in Canada, we've come out with, the Canadian edition. And I think that's a must read for everybody. And I just wish that there was that kind of interaction with the doctor at that stage. Doesn't have to be the manual, but at least some guiding principles about when you are ready, call this person, or when you are
right.
ready, have a look at this publication. Because coming out of there, I didn't know what to do and what to expect. And the internet is a scary thing.
Right.
So my experience was that I quickly looked for a different neurologist because, in my opinion, I think we deal with the physical symptoms with the doctor, but we're a whole person, and we need to be treated holistically. And I think now that the way to go is to have a doctor and a specialist as one part of the team, but
Mhm.
there should be other, allied health professionals as part of the team. So I just wish that with sharing my experience could help and try and get that kind of assistance right at the day of diagnosis and set yourself up for success, not failure.
Yeah. How hard was it in Canada, to find another neurologist and be able to get in to see one?
It takes a while. I mean, it takes about a year to get a formal diagnosis, and then close to a year to get referred to a movement disorder specialist as well.
Mhm.
It took me about 6 months to find another neurologist, um, which was much better for me because they listened to me. I think that's the biggest difference. They listened to how I was feeling, as opposed to the writing out the script, take the medication, and we'll see you in 6 months. So I've heard of other people that have great experiences, and I think they are way ahead down the road to living well with Parkinson at an earlier time in their
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah. So you started taking the meds, and how did it manage your symptoms?
It took a while. It also took about close to about a year before I found the right balance.
Mm,
But then when I found the balance, I started feeling better. That's when I started thinking about exercising again because I went from running to living on the couch. But I wanted to get that balance right. And then when I started moving again, I found that the medication had a greater impact. I don't have, even now, I don't have a definite on and off sort of period. I just have now, stiffness. Although the first 10 years or the first 8 years was my honeymoon period because
Mm.
I was moving more fluidly and more frequently. So the medication, once I reached that optimum dosage where I could function and walk and run and contribute and still work, that took a while, but I finally did get there. So I'm on this mixture, of Cinemet and Primipexel. Those are the terms here in Canada.
Hmm.
Um, the good news is that over the last 10 years, my medication hasn't increased that much. I'm pleasantly surprised at that. And I try and maybe counter the increase in medication with exercise. I think it's certainly helped with
Hmm.
that balance. But it was more of the emotional stuff that I had to deal with in the first 7, 8 years because I didn't reach out to the community. I first denied what I had and came up with excuses and disengaged, as I said earlier. And it was only when I started feeling better that I reached out to the community. And again, if I could tell my younger self what to do, it is to reach out earlier at that point of acceptance.
Yeah.
Go to support groups, reach out for publications, engage, because there's a lot of support and a lot of help out there, that I've met and engaged with. And it certainly helps with this journey.
Yeah. So you said that you kind of isolated yourself, and did you have kids when you were diagnosed?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so what were those conversations? How old were your kids? What were those conversations like?
Yeah, that first conversation with my wife was unbelievable. She was driving home, and when I broke the news to her on the telephone, she had to pull over and stop because she was overcome with all of the same thoughts that I had. When I got home, it was unusual for me to be home during the day because I was a corporate immigration lawyer and I was working long hours. When I came home after seeing the doctor, my kids, who were young adults at the time, home from school at the time, found it very strange that I was at home. They were shocked, obviously. They didn't understand as much as I did, or didn't understand what my future would be. But I think they were just waiting to see how I coped with it. They were distraught. My son, who is 30 now, who was in his 20s, didn't realize that, or didn't appreciate how a father who was committed to the family could be stricken with this life-changing diagnosis. My daughter was starting to study physiotherapy and
Mm,
kinesiology, so she had a bit of an understanding of Parkinson's. And she kind of wasn't convinced about my confidence when I said that everything will be okay. She kind of saw through it, and but I think they took some comfort in seeing what I was doing. Obviously, offered me unconditional love and support, and my wife is a personal trainer, so she was obviously pushing me to get going and start living. But I obviously had the unconditional support of them through those dark periods as well, until they kind of just said, well, look, if you don't want to go out, then we going and we'll see you in a couple of hours, because I still couldn't find the motivation to leave the house.
yeah.
But obviously with when that changed, I did have the full encouragement. The
Hmm.
interesting thing about my daughter is she's now studying to be a chiropractor. And a few years ago, she approached us. She wanted to have a tattoo. And she came up to us and said, I'd like to have a tattoo. And I thought it was going to be like a heart or I love Canada or I love Johnny or whatever it was. But what it was is the chemical compound of dopamine, which she put
Aw.
on her ankle. And I asked her why she had done that. And she said, that's what you lack. But sometimes you don't see it. So it's a reminder of what I don't have internally, which is dopamine externally. It's a reminder of what I've
Oh,
got. So I thought that was quite touching.
yeah. Oh, wow. So, did you ever get or did you ever seek help for depression and anxiety while during those initial years?
Yes, I did, and I I was chasing that corporate. I was on that corporate treadmill, working hard, being an immigrant, providing for my family, relicensing as a lawyer. So I had all of those stresses and strains, and I think that sort of added to my depression at the time. So I was treated, but there was never a discussion about Parkinson's, obviously, because it was just a pill, take this, exercise and do. I was trying to do all the right things, but as the years went on, it progressed and then became the physical manifestations and then the diagnosis of Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
So looking back now, I do think that there were all these indications, and I think that goes to the education as well. The GP, your primary health provider should be better educated to maybe start asking harder questions when we go and see them, because maybe there could have been a change at an earlier stage.
Right.
Of my
How
career.
did you handle telling your employer? How long was that?
Yeah, so disclosure is a big topic, and I've also, heard of these experiences. For me, once I felt good, once I was under medication at that optimal level, once I was functioning well, I decided to disclose. Up until then, there was a certain amount of fibbing because people could see I still had a tremor in my right hand. So I used to say, well, it was too much coffee. And then when I was walking or I couldn't walk down the corridor to a team meeting, people would notice my right leg dragging. What was that? Well, I worked out too hard this morning. And that was perpetuating. And that really got me down because I was, living a somewhat double life. When I decided to disclose, there was a tremendous sense of relief, both in myself and in my staff, because they turned around and said, well, thank you for telling us. I mean, we've known for years, that you've had something. And really the amazing thing is it was complete acceptance. Like I disclosed it to my family, my staff said, well, okay, so what does that mean? And so there was a tremendous sense of relief when that happened. And my career still progressed. I became a partner and was admitted to partnership after my diagnosis. But then, 4 or 5 years after being admitted as a partner, that's when I started developing some of the cognitive issues. I used to lose my train of thought in a meeting. Questions were asked, and by the time it went around the table, I had forgotten the question. And I remember one example where I was sitting at my desk with my assistant with me, and I couldn't dial out of the telephone, and I thought, wow, something's up with this. So what happened is that, my Parkinson's had caught up with my career. That's what really happened with that intersection. So I took some time and extracted myself from my partner. The partnership took some time off. But that whole disclosure was fine. But just that as my disease progressed, it did intersect with my performance. And that's when I decided to take some time off and recharge and regenerate.
Mm-hmm. And so are you working now?
So what happened after that is that I took some time off. I started writing blogs and posted some stuff on the internet, and was encouraged with the responses that I've got, and it kept me engaged. And I decided to write a book about my first 8 or 9 years of living with Parkinson's. So that was very therapeutic for me because I weaved it into my whole story of life in South Africa and immigration. And then what I realized is that I started missing the corporate working world, but I knew I couldn't function at that high level as a partner. As a lawyer, we like to be creative, we like to pivot, we like to be able to have the confidence with the clients. And I realized that at that high level, I didn't have that or display that. But what I did is I decided to write out a job description about what I did over my years of an immigration lawyer. And I realized that there was a lot that I could still do. So what I did is I devised my own sort of job description about what I could do, and no longer worried about what I could no longer do. And then I started looking for a job, and I entered the workforce again about a year ago, at an operational level, doing the stuff that I used to do as a younger lawyer, but I can do it with confidence that I don't have to worry about the partnership stresses and strains, because I think that was impacting, my condition. So I'm at that level where I feel comfortable in doing what I'm doing, and that keeps me engaged during the day. I do take breaks when I need to, but I found an employer who obviously has known about my journey over the last 10 years plus, understands what I am and who I am. And I think that's a great indication that we are still employable, because I think that was my big question is, should I go back to the workforce, and could I go back to the workforce? And I think the experiment that I did on my own is that, yes, we can. We may not be at that high level, but that's okay. We're still valuable. We still can contribute, and we can still hold down a job. And if you're well enough, I'd encourage other people to do that, because I found myself sitting back on the couch, but thinking that, what am I going to be doing now for the rest of my life? And I think that's sort of a dangerous place to be, with Parkinson's, knowing that it's incurable and progressive. So it's worked out well. But every opportunity I do try and educate. I try and educate employers, because a lot of the symptoms of Parkinson's is invisible. These days I don't have a very definite manifest tremor. And people are always complimentary, and I always appreciate that. But a lot of the stuff is all internal. It's the internal tremors that you don't see externally. The cognitive, where I've got to slow down and think about and write things down before I forget them. So those are the sort of the compromises that I have to adopt to keep functioning. And I think, and I'm patient with myself. And I think that's the most important thing now is that you've just got to, that you can still do things, but you've got to do them differently.
Yeah, I think that piece about educating employers, especially around that cognitive piece, is if they don't understand what's happening cognitively, they'll take it either he's not paying attention, or
Right.
he's just slacking, or he's not willing to do the work. And just giving them that little piece of education to say, listen, like, I'm still working. It's just slower.
That's
I don't have the words for it. But that's a big piece, because it's also how your employer is going to treats you is how like the rest of that company is going to treat you.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean, up in Canada, we've got all of the laws that protect a person on disclosure, and all the laws on accommodation and requests. But that's great on the books. But in practice, even when you disclose, there's no question that you are viewed differently.
Yeah.
A career certainly can go off the rails. In my case, it was performance. My employer thought, well, Larry, you're not performing. And they knew about my condition, and yet they still had the same issue. So I never had that opportunity to discuss that. But that is the issue, in that it's always an invisible issue. And there's no doubt that there's impact felt once you disclose. But the issue with me is that, obviously, if you are a different worker where the safety of other workers is important, I think the topic of disclosure is more important. And I would love to live in a world where we shouldn't have to worry about disclosing. It should be a comfort zone to disclose. But I think that starts with education of the employer, education of the public, and the perception of who we are with Parkinson's and other chronic illnesses, so that there's a world of acceptance. And it really starts with the leadership of these organizations to encourage hiring and to be out there supporting people with illnesses and other neurodiverse challenges, to employ these kind of people,
Right.
which is my advocacy sort of work that I try and talk about, besides Parkinson's itself.
Yeah. And I also think the point about, Anya said, thank you for sharing. I needed to get away from the high stress situation of teaching high school, but I still feel capable. It's a very good idea to write my own resume. I mean, just that is such a practical tool that you offered people. I mean, young onset, that's
Right,
tough, right? Most people are at the height of their career when this
right,
happens. And
right,
so it's a whole different being able to understand what might happen and that you're still super valuable and there are things that you can do. And I
right,
love that tool to be able to figure some of them out.
right.
Um, but also, you know, not giving up on yourself
Right.
because the employment world is probably going to give up on, like, that's just their
Yes.
nature, right? There's the fear. I'm
Yes.
going to see somebody who's manifesting something physically. I don't understand it. It makes me scared,
Yeah.
right? And so they just project whatever those feelings are onto you. And so not giving up and just
Yeah.
continuing to advocate for yourself.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's business. It's never personal. That's what they always tell you. But it is personal because it's us. We live with this 24/7. We take it home with us. But I think what has also happened is that it gave me time to recenter myself and recalibrate, and to take some time to learn about myself as well. So this whole journey has been a journey of self-discovery for me. Um, I've actually liked the person that I've become, because I'm more I live with gratitude, every day. I still am confident in what I can do, and I'm grateful that people can see that. My life has certainly changed somewhat because it's more planned. I've got to, I take my medication in the morning and then wait to get onto the treadmill or get to gym, for example. I have to plan when I'm taking a trip about, what do I need to get out the door, and what do I need to then make sure that I've got things in the car. In the car, I don't listen to the radio. So I don't know if that's a product of aging. It probably is. But it's okay because I'm forgiving of myself, and I think that's important as well. So when it comes to the whole disclosure and the impact of employment, my advice is give yourself the benefit of the doubt, give yourself time, be kind to yourself first, because there's still value in a life with Parkinson's.
Yeah. Did you, during that period where you took some time, did you have any disability, any insurance, anything that you had kick in, or did you just take the time off?
Um, well, that was the issue why I took time off, because I had to deal with that. As part of my separation, there were some issues over my disability, and I had to straighten that out. But that was straightened out, and I have been on long-term disability. When I started work again, though, obviously I've given that up,
Mhm.
because you can't be on disability. But in Canada, we've got provincial coverage as well, which is suspended, and my private insurance has been sort of discounted based on what I was earning and what I'm doing now. So it does help. I mean, I can't retire on my disability, but it certainly does assist in that income replacement. That's
Mm.
really what I view it as. But I'm grateful that I have that opportunity to continue working, and we'll see how that goes. My latest investment has been a walking treadmill. I mean, right next to my desk here, I've got a walking treadmill, which is half the size of a regular treadmill because it's there for walking. And then in between, calls or meetings or, your boring meetings held by your boss, I get onto the treadmill and at least I'm doing my steps.
Yeah.
And I think that's important as well, is to just keep moving as frequently and for as long as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go a little bit, talk about support and what you did. So what was your first foray into a support group or reaching out and trying to find other people who are living with Parkinson's?
Yeah, so when I started engaging with the community again, the first thing I did is I went to a support group at Parkinson Canada, which is the national nonprofit across Canada. And I joined a support group, and I was really amazed because it took me about 7-8 years to get there. And I was in a room of people, both with who had been newly diagnosed and then sort of veterans of 8-9 years like myself. But it was amazing because I felt like part of the family straight away. I felt connected, and questions were being asked and answered on the spot, which had taken me, months to try and research and find answers myself. And then when I did find them, they were the wrong answers. So I felt a tremendous amount of friendship, camaraderie, and support, and that was important. That led to joining a cycling group called Rigid Riders, where we bike riders in the summer.
Oh, that's a good name.
Yes, yeah. We ride in the summer. Obviously, in Canada, you don't ride in the winter, and that was great. And I've made a lot of friends through it, and again feel a bonding through this common element of Parkinson's. And then I also, that my community work extended to Davis Phinney, because throughout my journey, I've always looked at living well with Parkinson's. And you've got other foundations, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which has been traditionally focusing on research and finding a cure. But we've got to live well, while others are finding the cure. And I was really impressed with the support that Davis Phinney offers in terms of its own support. And the ambassadorship is a tremendous network. I've had the opportunity to engage with a lot of the staff, and I find it, for me, great because it's addressing what I need right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important.
Yeah.
And then back to Canada, I expanded and became the co-chair of the Parkinson Advisory Council, which was set up, which was a first for Parkinson Canada. And as part of that committee, I was on a subcommittee doing the Davis Phinney Every Victory Counts manual for Canada. Mm-hmm. And that was tremendous as well, because we now have got our own publication, which is just as thick as yours in the US, but it has a ton of information. And I'm actually more proud of that publication than I am of my own book, to be honest, because it memorializes everything what we are supposed to be doing, and that's living well with Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. And it's a book that you can refer to at any stage, whenever you need it. And I think that's tremendous. And as I said earlier, I only wish that book is available every time or every day that people are getting diagnosed with Parkinson's.
I know. That is the goal for the next couple of years, to get in every single neurology and doctor's office and MDS. But we wish that more people, just more people had a better first conversation. Right. Where it wasn't just all doom and gloom and, hey, there's stuff you can do. I mean, imagine, right? 40s getting diagnosed with young onset and just saying, So better conversations, and then being willing to reach out earlier.
Right.
I think a lot of people, they picture that group of, or their initial reach out is to go to a group and they see everybody who's 30 years older than them and way down the line, and then it gets really scary.
Right.
And having more opportunities within every community that address each people at different stages and ages of Parkinson's.
Right. And I think the young onset group is very special in that sense, because we have different challenges. Parkinson's has traditionally been an old person's, or perceived as an old person's disease, but it's not. A lot more people at a younger age are getting diagnosed, and therefore we have our own issues. And as I said earlier, the issues of work, roles, and responsibilities, those are more of the psychological traumas that we go through, besides dealing with the physical symptoms, which are as important, if not more important, than dealing with those physical symptoms of Parkinson's.
Absolutely. So what would you say are the 3 most important actions that you take every day?
I think the 3, I'll probably forget, this is like a cognitive test. The 3 is living with gratitude. I still appreciate what I can do, and I don't now fixate on the things that I cannot do. I kind of beat myself up in the early years about what I couldn't do and why, woe is me. I played the victim of that. But these days I'm grateful and live with gratitude. The other thing is exercise. I think you have to do whatever you can and maintain a physical. You've got to adopt as much physical activity as possible, even if it's walking, even if it's crawling. Just move. Even if you're in a chair, pick up weights or do something. I'd encourage everybody to do that. And the most important, the third, is know and appreciate that there is life to live with Parkinson's. A diagnosis of Parkinson's doesn't mean that your life is over. It may take a while to get there, but you can still come to the realization that you are valued, that you are loved, and that you still have a contribution to make.
I love it. That's a great way to wrap it up. I so appreciate you taking the time, Larry, to be with us today and talk about your experience, and just put the Canada version of the Every Victory Counts manual up there. And we will definitely direct people there. And thank you so much
Thanks for your time.
spending the time.
Yeah, thank you, Mel, and thanks for all the work that you do.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Bye, everybody.